My husband, Richard, always said I was stronger than I gave myself credit for. In the lonely months after he passed, I certainly didn't feel it. I just felt like a widow whose only job was to ensure her son's happiness. So when my son, Leo, got married, I almost told his beautiful new wife, Bella, about the $7 million estate my husband had left me. I wanted to give them the world. Thank God I stayed quiet, because 3 days after the wedding, Bella showed up on my doorstep. Her sweet smile was gone, replaced by a cold ambition. And she wasn't alone. She brought a notary. They thought I was a frail, grieving woman they could easily push aside. They were about to find out that a mother's love and a wife's loyalty can be the most dangerous weapon of all. Don't miss a single chapter of this story of family, betrayal, and revenge. Make sure to subscribe for updates, hit that like button if you're ready for the drama, and comment below with what you think I should do next. The silence in the house was a physical thing. 6 months after Richard's passing, it had settled into the corners of every room, a permanent resident I was still learning to live with. Our house, once a bustling hub of projects, laughter, and the low hum of the television Richard always kept on, now felt like a museum of a life I used to have. His favorite armchair still held the faint imprint of his shoulders. His reading glasses were still on the nightstand. I couldn't bring myself to move them. Moving them felt like an eviction. Richard was a planner, an architect by trade. He had blueprinted our entire life with the same meticulous care he used for a downtown skyscraper. He'd built a successful firm, invested wisely, and always told me with a pat on my hand, "Ellie, no matter what, you'll be all right." I'd smiled and nodded, trusting him completely. The details of our finances, a comfortable, abstract concept I never needed to engage with. Now, his planning was the only thing standing between me and a future that felt terrifyingly vast and empty. I knew I was provided for. I just didn't yet understand the scale of it. My one bright spot, the single beacon in the fog of my grief, was our son Leo. He had Richard's kind eyes but my softer heart. He'd been my rock these last few months, calling every day, insisting I eat, making sure the lawn was mowed. When he told me he and his girlfriend Bella were getting married, a part of me that I thought had died with Richard flickered back to life. A wedding. A new beginning. As I dusted the mantelpiece, my fingers tracing the frame of our wedding photo, I felt a pang of sorrow so sharp it stole my breath. Richard should be here. He should be fussing over his suit, preparing a long-winded sentimental speech, and slipping Leo a C-note with a wink. He would have loved to see his son so happy. And he would have wanted to welcome his new daughter-in-law to the family in the grandest way possible. I made a quiet vow to the man in the photograph. I would do it for him. We had the pre-wedding dinner at a small Italian place downtown that Leo loved. It was all dark wood, checkered tablecloths, and the warm scent of garlic. From the moment she walked in, Bella was radiant. She was beautiful, of course, with dark, glossy hair and a smile that seemed to light up the room. She wore a simple but elegant black dress that I knew, instinctively, cost more than my entire outfit. "Eleanor, you look wonderful," she said, her voice like warm honey as she kissed the air beside my cheek. She smelled of expensive perfume. "Leo tells me this is your favorite spot." It wasn't. It was Leo's. I smiled and said, "It's lovely, dear." Throughout the dinner, she was the picture of the perfect daughter-in-law. She hung on Leo's every word, laughing at his familiar silly jokes as if she were hearing them for the first time. She held his hand across the table, her perfectly manicured nails a stark, crimson contrast to the white tablecloth. "Your ring is just stunning, Eleanor," she said, gesturing to the simple diamond and sapphire Richard had given me. "Leo has such wonderful taste. He gets it from his mother, obviously." "Thank you, Bella," I said, my hand curling instinctively around the ring. I watched her as she talked, as she charmed my son, as she refilled my water glass before the waiter could. And I felt a tiny dissonant note, a hum of something just beneath the surface. It was in the way her eyes, while she was smiling at me, seemed to be cataloging the quality of my jewelry. It was in the fleeting, almost imperceptible glance she gave the other patrons, a flicker of assessment before her adoring gaze returned to Leo. I chastised myself immediately. Stop it, Eleanor. You're grieving. You're lonely. Don't turn into a cliché, the jealous mother-in-law. I forced a warmer smile and asked her about her family. She launched into a story about her father's import-export business and her mother's charity work, a lovely narrative of quiet wealth and good breeding. It was all so perfect, a little too perfect. The wedding day was a blur of white lace, champagne, and tears, mostly mine. The ceremony was held at a botanical garden, the air thick with the scent of roses and the promise of a new life. Seeing Leo at the altar, his face alight with a kind of pure, unadulterated joy I hadn't seen since he was a boy, made my heart ache with love and sorrow. Richard's absence was a chasm beside me. At the reception, I was seated at the head table, a smiling sentinel watching my son and his new wife. They were a beautiful couple, gliding across the dance floor, whispering in each other's ears. It was time for my speech. I clutched the note cards I'd prepared, my hand trembling slightly. I stood, tapped my glass for attention, and began. I spoke of Leo as a child, of the man he had become, of the pride Richard always had in him. My eyes started to well up. Richard would have been so proud today, I said, my voice thick with emotion. He would have wanted to give you the world, a perfect start to your new life together. My plan was to continue from there. To announce the substantial check I had tucked into a card, to allude to the secure future his father had guaranteed for them. It was the grand gesture Richard would have made. But as I looked at my son, I saw Bella's face just over his shoulder. She was smiling, a brilliant, dazzling smile for the crowd, but her eyes were fixed on me. And in them I saw an intensity, a sharp, hungry expectation that went beyond bridal happiness. A cold, prickling sensation, as tangible as an icy draft, snaked up my spine. It was the same unsettling feeling from the restaurant, magnified 100 times. An instinct, deep and primal, screamed at me. Don't. My breath hitched. I looked away from her, back to Leo's trusting, happy face. I abandoned the script. And he would have been thrilled, I continued, my voice now calmer, steadier, to welcome a daughter as lovely as Bella into our family. To a lifetime of love and happiness. To Leo and Bella. I raised my glass. The room echoed with cheers. I sat down, my heart hammering against my ribs. I felt a bead of sweat trickle down my back. I didn't know why I had done it, why I had held back. But as I watched Bella's brilliant smile flicker for just a second, a strange and powerful sense of relief washed over me. I'd kept something back. I'd kept something safe. 3 days after the wedding, the quiet in my house felt less like grief and more like peace. The flowers from the reception were in a vase on the table. Their sweet scent a pleasant reminder of the happy day. Leo and Bella were on their honeymoon in Hawaii, flooding my phone with pictures of turquoise water and beaming smiles. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. Then came the knock on the door. Imperative. Not the friendly rap of a neighbor. I opened it to find Bella standing on my porch. My first thought was that their trip had been cut short. Bella, is everything okay? She wasn't dressed in honeymoon resort wear. She wore a severe charcoal pantsuit, her hair pulled back in a tight, punishing chignon. The warm, effusive girl from the wedding was gone. In her place was a cool, clipped stranger. Everything is fine, Eleanor, she said, her voice devoid of its usual honeyed tone. We got back early. There was some business to attend to. My eyes moved past her to the man standing just behind her on the walkway. He was in his 50s, with a gray, impassive face and a dark suit that seemed to absorb the afternoon light. He held a leather briefcase at his side like a soldier holding a rifle. He didn't smile. He didn't even look at me. A knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. Business. Bella stepped aside, gesturing for the man to come forward. Her smile was a thin, brittle line. It didn't reach her eyes. Eleanor, she said, her voice crisp and formal. This is Mr. Gable. He's a notary public. The words Notary Public hung in the air of my living room, sucking the warmth right out of it. Mr. Gable stood stiffly by the door while Bella swept into the room as if she owned it, placing her designer handbag on the chair Richard used to sit in. The violation felt immediate and profound. "Please sit down, Eleanor," Bella said. It wasn't a request. It was a command disguised as one. I sat slowly on the edge of the sofa, my hands clasped in my lap. The peaceful quiet of my home had been replaced by a silence that was predatory. "Leo and I have been talking," Bella began, crossing her legs and smoothing down her trousers. "Now that you're on your own, we want to make sure things are simpler for you. Managing a large home, finances. It can be a burden. We want to take that burden off your shoulders." My blood ran cold. Mr. Gable stepped forward and, with a soft click, opened his briefcase on the coffee table, Richard's coffee table, which he had built himself. He pulled out a thick stack of documents, perfectly squared, and placed them in front of me. The top page was titled, "Vance Family Revocable Trust." "Leo and I had this drawn up," Bella said, her voice cool and clinical. "It puts the house and your other primary assets into a trust. I will act as the primary trustee, with Leo as the secondary. It just makes everything cleaner, for estate planning and for your future care." Your future care. The phrase hit me like a slap. I stared at the documents, the dense blocks of legal text blurring before my eyes. This wasn't help. This was a coup. A bloodless, smiling legal coup. They saw me not as a mother, but as a doddering old woman sitting on a pile of assets they wanted. My son, my sweet naive Leo, was either a willing participant or a fool, and at that moment, I wasn't sure which was worse. The initial shock gave way to a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. But I knew, with absolute certainty, that showing it would be a fatal mistake. They expected tears or confusion. They expected a weak, grieving widow. I would give them one. I looked up, letting my eyes go wide with manufactured bewilderment. I let a tremble enter my voice. "Oh my, a trust. This is all so sudden." I reached for the papers, my hand shaking slightly, a performance that required little effort. Richard always handled the paperwork. I can't even read this without my glasses. I looked from Bella's impatient face to Mr. Gable's stony expression. "I'll need some time to review this," I said, my voice sounding frail and thin even to my own ears. "An old friend of my husband's helps me with these things. I'll need to ask him." Bella's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. She had expected a signature today. "Of course, Eleanor," she said, her condescension a razor blade wrapped in silk. "Take all the time you need." The moment the front door clicked shut behind them, I stopped shaking. I stood up and walked to the window, watching their car pull away from the curb. The fear was still there, a frantic bird beating its wings in my chest. But it was joined by something else now. Something hard and cold and clear. Richard had always said I was stronger than I thought. It was time to prove him right. The front door clicked shut, and the silence that rushed back in was no longer peaceful. It was menacing. The stack of documents on the coffee table was a viper coiled in the heart of my home. My hands were shaking, a fine tremor I couldn't control. For a moment, I felt a wave of helplessness so profound it threatened to drown me. They were young, ruthless, and they had my son. I was just a widow. Then I thought of Richard. He would not stand for this. He would be furious, a quiet, controlled rage that was more terrifying than any shouting match. And he would not fight it alone. My fingers, still trembling, fumbled with my phone. I scrolled past Leo's number, past the numbers of my book club friends, until I found the one I needed. Arthur Chen. Richard's lawyer. Richard's best friend since college. He answered on the second ring, his voice warm and familiar. "Eleanor, how are you holding up?" "Arthur," I said, my voice cracking on his name. "I need your help." I told him everything, my words tumbling out in a rushed, panicked whisper. I told him about the wedding, the strange feeling, the knock on the door, the pantsuit, the impassive notary, and the stack of papers currently poisoning my living room. I expected him to be calm, to be reassuring. He was not. He was silent for a long moment after I finished. When he finally spoke, the warmth was gone, replaced by a blade of ice. "The sheer, unmitigated gall," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Eleanor, listen to me very carefully. Do not sign a single thing. Don't even initial a post-it note. Do you understand me?" "Yes," I whispered. "I want to see those documents," he commanded. "My office. Tomorrow morning. 9 o'clock sharp. And Eleanor, don't tell Leo you're coming." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my heart still pounding, but the frantic bird of panic in my chest was beginning to calm. Arthur had the helm now. For the first time since opening the door to Bella, I was no longer alone. Arthur Chen's office was a fortress of mahogany and leather-bound books. It smelled of old paper and quiet confidence, a stark contrast to the cloying scent of Bella's perfume that still lingered in my house. He greeted me not with a handshake, but with a firm, comforting hand on my shoulder, guiding me to a plush leather armchair. He took the documents from me and scanned them, his expression growing darker with every page he turned. "Standard predatory playbook," he muttered, tossing the stack onto his desk with contempt. "They transfer everything into a trust she controls, declare you incompetent within a year, and stick you in the cheapest home that will have you. Vultures." He looked at me, his eyes full of a sad understanding. "Eleanor, before we go any further, there's something you need to know. Something Richard and I discussed at length. I don't think you ever fully understood the extent of the portfolio he built." He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick, bound folder. "He didn't just leave you comfortable," Arthur said gently. "After all assets were liquidated and taxes paid, Richard left an estate valued at just over $7 million. The number hit me with the force of a physical blow. $7 million. I knew Richard was successful, but I had no idea. I had spent the last 6 months worried about property taxes and the price of groceries, when I was sitting on that. The scale of Bella's ambition and her betrayal suddenly became sickeningly clear. "There's more," Arthur said. He swiveled in his chair and opened the large safe behind him. He removed a simple cream-colored envelope with my name on it, written in Richard's familiar, elegant script. "He left this for you," he said. "Give it to her if she ever truly needs it. I think that time is now." My hands trembled as I took it. The paper was thick, expensive. Broke the seal. "My dearest Ellie," it began. "If you are reading this, it means I am gone and you are in some kind of trouble. Forgive me for not being there to handle it myself. My greatest failure in life is having to leave you alone. I love you more than I ever found the words to say. Which is why I must be blunt. I have provided for you and I have provided for our son. But I have not provided for them equally, and I have not made it easy. Leo has a good heart, Ellie, but it's an open book, and I've always worried that someone would come along and write a terrible story in it. He sees the world as he wishes it was, not as it is. That is why I have given you sole, ironclad control over every last penny. It is yours, not his, not anyone else's. This isn't to punish him. It's to protect him. And to protect you. You are wiser and stronger than you have ever given yourself credit for. Trust your instincts. They have never failed you yet. Live a long, happy life, my love. You have earned it. Yours always, Richard." Tears streamed down my face, blurring his beautiful words. They were tears not of grief, but of profound validation. This wasn't me being a jealous mother. This was me carrying out my husband's last wish. The letter was a shield. It was a weapon. It was permission to fight. "She picked the wrong widow," Arthur said, his voice a low growl as I finished reading the letter. He closed the thick financial portfolio. "Right. The investigation begins now. I'm hiring a man, a private investigator named Marco. He's discreet and he's thorough. We need to know who Isabella Rossi really is, not who she pretends to be." That night I couldn't sleep. The numbers and Richard's words swirled in my head. Arthur and his PI would handle the official channels, the legal and financial histories. But I was a mother. I knew how to look for the things a PI might miss. The social cues, the digital whispers, the cracks in a carefully constructed facade. Fueled by a pot of strong black coffee, I sat at my computer and dove into the curated world of Bella Rossi. Her own social media was a pristine landscape of charity events, sophisticated travel, and loving posts about my son. But I clicked past her profile and into the tangled web of her tagged photos and friends list. A photo from 3 years ago, posted by a cousin. Bella was in a gaudy, ill-fitting bridesmaid dress, her smile tight. The caption read, "So happy for Bella on her big day." Her big day. I thought her wedding to Leo was her first. Kept digging. I found her mother's profile. The photos weren't of charity galas, but of boisterous trips to Las Vegas and Atlantic City. Her mother draped in flashy jewelry and posing with a slot machine, a champagne flute in her hand. This wasn't the quiet, philanthropic matron Bella had described. Each discovery was a thread, and I pulled on them one by one. The story of the perfect daughter-in-law was unraveling, replaced by a portrait of something else entirely. Something cheap and desperate and hungry. I knew I had to try. For Richard's sake, and for the memory of the boy I raised, I had to give Leo a chance to see the truth. I called him, my voice bright and breezy, and asked him to meet for coffee. He arrived looking wary, his shoulders tense. He was already on the defensive. "Mom, what's this about?" he asked before the waitress had even brought our water. I tried to be gentle. "Leo, darling, I just wanted to talk about the papers Bella brought over." It was a lot to take in. It all happened so fast. "I just wanted to understand what you were thinking." He stiffened, and I saw Bella's coaching click into place behind his eyes. "We were thinking of you, Mom," he said, his tone patient as if speaking to a child. "We're worried about you being alone in that big house. It's too much for you to manage. We just want to make things easier. Leo, your father made sure I was fine. It feels less like you're helping me and more like you're taking over," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. His face hardened. "You know, Bella said you'd be like this. She said you wouldn't be able to let go. It feels like you just don't want to accept her into the family, Mom." The accusation was a physical blow. "That's not true," I whispered. "Isn't it?" he shot back, his voice rising. "She is my wife. She's my family now. She's trying to help you, and all you can do is be suspicious and paranoid. You need to trust her. You need to trust me." I looked into my son's eyes, and for the first time I didn't see my son. I saw Bella's puppet, her words coming out of his mouth. He had made his choice. He had chosen the woman who had known him for a year over the mother who had loved him his entire life. The door on a simple, happy resolution slammed shut. The pain of it was breathtaking. I left my coffee untouched on the table. A week later I was back in Arthur's office. The air was thick with a grim sense of purpose. A thin, manila file lay on the desk between us. "Marco delivered his preliminary report," Arthur said, tapping the file. "It's worse than we thought." He opened it and began to read. My carefully constructed composure began to crumble with each word. Bella's family's import-export business was a string of failed LLCs and shell corporations, leaving a trail of unpaid vendors and lawsuits. Her father had filed for bankruptcy twice. Her mother's charity work was non-existent. She had, however, an outstanding marker at a casino in Atlantic City for $50,000. Then came the final, damning blow. "Isabella Rossi was married once before," Arthur said, his eyes fixed on mine. "To a man named Alistair Finch. He was 72, a recent widower with a substantial portfolio. They were married for precisely 4 months. He slid a document across the desk. It was a copy of an annulment decree. The marriage was annulled shortly after Mr. Finch, citing his advanced age, signed over power of attorney and transferred a significant number of assets to Bella to help manage them. According to Marco's notes, Mr. Finch's children are now fighting to get it back. He's living in a small, assisted living apartment, a shadow of his former self. I stared at the paper. It was a playbook. Cold, practiced, predatory playbook. I wasn't her first target. I was just her next. I looked up at Arthur, and he saw the change in my face. The fear was gone. The grief was gone. The hurt from Leo's betrayal was still there, but it had been burned into fuel. What was left was a resolve as cold and hard as granite. This wasn't just about protecting Richard's money anymore. This was about stopping a monster. "What's our next move?" I asked, my voice steady and clear. I looked at the file on Arthur's desk, the sordid history of the Rossi family, the tragic story of Alastair Finch. It was a blueprint for ruin. My first instinct was to storm over to Leo, slap the file down in front of him, and force him to see the truth. Arthur, as always, was a step ahead of me. "A direct confrontation is exactly what she wants, Eleanor," he said, his voice calm and strategic. "She'll deny everything. She'll twist it, claim you're a vindictive, crazy old woman digging up dirt to ruin her son's marriage. She will isolate Leo from you completely, and he will believe her. We can't win by playing fair." He leaned forward, his expression intent. "Right now she thinks you're a frail, confused lamb, ripe for the shearing. We are going to let her think that." A grim smile touched his lips. "But this lamb is about to grow teeth." A cold, clarifying resolve settled over me. He was right. Playing the victim was no longer a defense. It was now the core of our offense. "What do I have to do?" I asked. "You have to call them," he said. "You have to apologize. You have to sound like you've been defeated." I went home, practiced in the mirror until the tremor in my voice sounded authentic, and dialed Leo's number. Bella answered, her voice cautious. "Bella dear," I began, injecting a weary sigh into my words. "It's Eleanor. Is everything all right?" Yes, I'm sorry about how I've been acting," I said, letting my voice crack. "I spoke with Arthur again, and he's just an old worrier, you know how he is. I've had time to think, and you're right. This house, the finances. It's all too much for me now. I'm ready to discuss things properly. I trust you and Leo to do what's best." There was a beat of stunned silence on the other end of the line, followed by the slow drip of poisonously sweet honey. "Oh, Eleanor," Bella cooed, the sound of victory in her voice. "I'm so glad you see that. We only want what's best for you." The first move had been made. The trap was set. They agreed to a meeting at my house. Bella's choice, I suspect, so she could survey her future kingdom. They arrived looking smug, Leo relieved that the family friction was over, and Bella dressed in a cream-colored suit, as if she were attending a board meeting she was about to win. Played my part. I served tea in Richard's finest china. I fretted over the strength of the brew. I asked simple questions about the trust documents, pretending to be utterly lost in the legal jargon. "Oh my, this is all so complicated. Thank goodness I have you, Bella. You have such a sharp mind for these things." Bella practically purred, lapping up the praise and condescendingly explaining the terms. Leo just sat there, smiling, pleased to see his two favorite women finally getting along. Then it was time. I let my gaze drift towards a portrait of Richard on the mantelpiece. I sighed dramatically. "You know," I began, my voice hesitant and soft. "There was something else. Something Richard never put in his official will." I had their complete attention. Even Leo leaned forward. "He had private investments," I said, lowering my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Things he kept very quiet about for tax purposes, you understand. He used to travel to the Cayman Islands once or twice a year. He always called that his real nest egg. Something entirely separate from what Mr. Chen knows about." I looked at them, my eyes wide with feigned innocence. "I don't even know the full amount. He said it was for a rainy day." Leo looked confused, but Bella's eyes. Her eyes lit up with a raw, predatory gleam that was terrifying and exhilarating to witness. Her pupils seemed to dilate. I could almost see the numbers spinning behind them. The known 7 million was now just an appetizer. I had just served her the main course, and it was entirely imaginary. The hook wasn't just baited, it was lodged deep in her throat. The prospect of a hidden, untraceable fortune made Bella reckless. The gentle pressure she'd been applying to Leo turned into a relentless campaign. My son, caught in the middle, started calling me more often. His voice strained. "Mom, Bella is really worried about those other accounts," he said one afternoon. "She says if they're not structured properly, the government could take a huge chunk of it when, she thinks we need to get everything into the trust immediately to protect it." He was just repeating her lines, a well-meaning parrot. "Don't you worry, darling," I cooed. "We'll sort it all out." On Arthur's advice, I had installed a recording app on my phone. He'd confirmed the one-party consent laws in our state. The next time Bella called me directly, I was ready. "Eleanor," she said, her voice impatient. "Have you found the documents for Richard's private accounts?" "Oh dear no," I said, sounding flustered. "Richard kept them in a safe deposit box. I'm not even sure I have the right key." A frustrated hiss came down the line. "Well, you need to find it. We need to move on this now. Listen to me carefully, Eleanor. People, the government, distant relatives you've never heard of, they come out of the woodwork when they smell big money. If we put it all under the trust, with me as the trustee, it's protected. It becomes our private family business, safe from everyone. Do you understand?" Her words were a gift. Twisting a plot to steal from me into a conspiracy to protect me from outsiders was a stunning piece of audacity. "Oh yes, dear," I whispered into the phone. "You're so clever. I understand perfectly." I hung up and saved the recording. It was Exhibit A. My study became my war room. The PI, Marco, had made contact with the eldest son of Alastair Finch, Bella's first husband victim. The son, a bitter, angry man in his 50s, was overjoyed to hear someone else was fighting back. He was more than willing to provide a notarized statement detailing Bella's systematic fleecing of his father. He even had copies of bank statements showing the transfers. "He said he'd fly out here on his own dime if it meant seeing her face when you confront her," Arthur told me over the phone. We decided to hold that offer in reserve, a trump card up our sleeve. With the evidence mounting, I turned to the most painful part of the plan. Leo. I sat one evening with Richard's letter in my lap, its paper soft from handling. "It's to protect him." My husband's words were clear. Giving Leo his share of the inheritance now would be like handing a loaded gun to a toddler. He hadn't earned the wisdom to wield it. I called Arthur. "I want to change the terms for Leo's inheritance," I said, my voice firm. "I want to create a new trust. He can't touch the principal until he is 40. He can receive income from it only after he has completed a financial literacy program of your choosing and has held a full-time job for 3 consecutive years. And I want the right to dissolve it entirely if he proves himself irresponsible." Arthur was silent for a moment. "That's harsh, Eleanor." "It's not harsh, Arthur," I replied, my eyes on Richard's portrait. "It's what a mother is supposed to do. It's the lesson he needs to learn." With all the pieces in place, the financial records, the recording, the testimony from the Finch family, and the new plan for Leo's future, it was time to set the final stage. I called them that evening. "Leo, Bella, darling," I chirped into the phone. "I've found the key. Why don't you both come for dinner tomorrow night? We can celebrate our new arrangement. Arthur will be here, just to make sure we sign everything in the right places." The bait was taken. The final supper was arranged. I set the formal dining room as if preparing for royalty. I used the wedding china we'd received 30 years ago, the heavy silverware Richard polished every Christmas, and the crystal glasses that rang with a clear, high note when tapped. I wanted the scene to be one of impeccable civilization, a stark contrast to the barbarism I was about to unleash. They arrived at 7 o'clock sharp. Leo, in a crisp blue shirt, looked boyishly happy, relieved that the family was back on an even keel. Bella was the picture of triumph in a silk blouse, her eyes sweeping across the dining room, mentally appraising the value of the silver, the paintings, the antique sideboard. She was no longer just a guest. In her mind, she was the lady of the manor doing a final inspection before taking possession. Arthur arrived a few minutes later, his leather briefcase in hand. His demeanor was professionally placid, but I could see the glint of steel in his eyes. He was the family lawyer, the trusted friend, the executioner. I served the roast chicken I knew was Leo's favorite. We made excruciating small talk about the weather, about their honeymoon, about a movie they had seen. The air was thick with unspoken words, a symphony of secret agendas. Finally, after I had cleared the dessert plates, Bella could wait no longer. She placed her hands on the table, a manicured queen ready to claim her throne. "Well, that was lovely, Eleanor," she said, her smile wide and victorious. "Shall we get the signing over with so we can all toast to the future?" I returned her smile, feeling a profound and icy calm settle over me. I looked from her avaricious face to my son's trusting one. "Almost," I said, my voice soft and clear. "There's just one final asset I'd like to discuss before we sign anything." Bella's expectant smile was fixed in place. "A final asset?" she asked, a flicker of excitement in her eyes. She thought I was about to reveal the details of the Cayman accounts. Leo just looked confused. "Yes," I said, meeting her gaze directly. I let the serene hostess persona drop from my face like a mask. "But I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about the truth." The shift in the room was instantaneous. The air, once celebratory, became thin and sharp. Bella's smile faltered. On cue, Arthur reached for his briefcase. He placed it on the table and opened it with a decisive snap. Bella's eyes were glued to it, expecting to see the trust documents she had provided. Instead, Arthur pulled out a thin, manila file. File. I took the top page. My hand was perfectly steady. "Let's start with the Rossi family finances," I said, my voice even and cold, stripped of all its previous frailty. I began to read, not with emotion, but with the dispassionate clarity of a newsreader. 2 personal bankruptcy filings for Mr. Giancarlo Rossi in the last 10 years. Outstanding debts to multiple vendors for 3 failed import-export businesses. A lien on the family home from a casino in Atlantic City. "This is ridiculous," Bella snapped, attempting a laugh that came out as a strangled bark. "Where did you get this garbage?" I ignored her and picked up the next sheet. "Or perhaps we should discuss your first marriage," I said, looking directly at her now. The blood drained from her face. "To Mr. Alistair Finch, a 72-year-old widower, married for 4 months, annulled on the grounds of fraud after you had him sign over power of attorney." I slid the copy of the annulment decree across the polished table. It stopped right next to her wine glass. "Does any of this sound familiar, dear?" "This is insane," Bella shrieked, bolting to her feet so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. "You're a bitter, vengeful old woman, making up lies to poison my husband against me." She whirled on Leo, her eyes flashing with desperation. "Leo, are you really going to sit there and let her talk to your wife this way?" Leo was frozen, his face a canvas of confusion and shock. He looked from the damning paper on the table to my resolute face, then to the furious woman who was his wife. "Mom, Ella, I don't understand." "Perhaps this will clarify things," Arthur said into the tense silence. He calmly took out his phone, touched the screen, and placed it on the table. Bella's own voice filled the room, cold, sharp, and utterly devoid of warmth. "Put it all in the trust, with me as the trustee. It's protected from everyone." Hearing her own calculated words, so full of conspiratorial greed, laid bare in the quiet dining room was the final blow. The mask of sophistication didn't just slip, it vaporized in a spectacular implosion of rage. "You idiot!" she screeched, turning on Leo with a face so contorted with hate he actually flinched back. "You weak-willed, gullible mommy's boy. I can't believe I wasted a year of my life on you and your pathetic family. She played you like a cheap fiddle, and you were too stupid to even see the strings. The venom in her voice was shocking. This was the real Bella. Not the charmer, not the schemer, but a vicious predator, snarling now that her prey had been snatched away. In that horrifying moment, Leo finally woke up. The love, the infatuation, the carefully constructed illusion of the perfect wife, it all shattered into a million pieces. He stared at the snarling stranger in front of him, his face pale, his mouth slightly agape in dawning horror. He wasn't just seeing her true face. He was seeing his own catastrophic foolishness reflected in her eyes. Realizing she had lost, not just the money but her hold on Leo, everything, Bella snatched her purse from the floor. Her face was a mask of pure fury. "Keep your money," she spat, her voice trembling with rage. "I hope you two are miserable together in this dusty old mausoleum." She shot a final, hateful glare at Leo. "Don't you ever contact me again." She stormed out of the dining room. A few seconds later, the front door slammed with a force that seemed to shake the entire house. The sound echoed in the profound, stunned silence she left behind. All the adrenaline, the tension, the righteous anger drained out of the room, leaving a vacuum of devastation. Arthur quietly stood and began packing the documents back into his briefcase, giving us space. Leo slumped in his chair as if his bones had dissolved. He dropped his head into his hands, his shoulders shaking. A terrible, ragged sob broke the silence. And then another. "Mom!" He choked out from behind his hands. "Mom, I'm so sorry. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it. I was so stupid." He looked up at me, his face wrecked with tears and a shame so deep it was painful to witness. My heart ached for the boy he was, but my mind was clear on the man he needed to become. The time for coddling was over. "Yes, you were, Leo," I said, my voice not cruel but firm. It was the hardest truth I had ever had to speak to him. "Apologies are a start, but they aren't enough. Forgiveness isn't something I can just give you. It's something you will have to earn." Realizing she had lost, not just the money but her hold on Leo, everything, Bella snatched her purse from the floor. Her face was a mask of pure fury. "Keep your money," she spat, her voice trembling with rage. "I hope you two are miserable together in this dusty old mausoleum." She shot a final, hateful glare at Leo. "Don't you ever contact me again." She stormed out of the dining room. A few seconds later, the front door slammed with a force that seemed to shake the entire house. The sound echoed in the profound, stunned silence she left behind. All the adrenaline, the tension, the righteous anger drained out of the room, leaving a vacuum of devastation. Arthur quietly stood and began packing the documents back into his briefcase, giving us space. Leo slumped in his chair as if his bones had dissolved. He dropped his head into his hands, his shoulders shaking. A terrible, ragged sob broke the silence. And then another. "Mom!" He choked out from behind his hands. "Mom, I'm so sorry. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it. I was so stupid." He looked up at me, his face wrecked with tears and a shame so deep it was painful to witness. My heart ached for the boy he was, but my mind was clear on the man he needed to become. The time for coddling was over. "Yes, you were, Leo," I said, my voice not cruel but firm. It was the hardest truth I had ever had to speak to him. "Apologies are a start, but they aren't enough. Forgiveness isn't something I can just give you. It's something you will have to earn." A year later, I was sitting on the terrace of a small villa overlooking the Aegean Sea, a trip I had always wanted to take with Richard. The sun was warm on my skin, and the water was a shade of blue so intense it seemed unreal. I was at peace. I thought about the past year, about the woman I had been, the grieving, quiet widow, and the woman I had become. My vow to Richard had been fulfilled, not by doling out his money, but by defending his legacy with a strength I never knew I possessed. I realized then that my silence at the wedding wasn't just a lucky gut feeling. It was the culmination of 30 years of knowing my husband, of absorbing his quiet foresight, of letting his strength become my own. It was an instinct I had finally learned to trust. My phone buzzed. It was a picture message from Leo. It wasn't a selfie from an expensive vacation, but a photo of a certificate of completion for his finance course. Under it, a simple message. One step down. A long way to go. Love you, Mom. I smiled and typed back, I love you too. I'm proud of you. And I was. Our relationship was not what it was. It was better. It was no longer built on his dependence and my indulgence, but on a fragile, growing foundation of honesty and mutual respect. I put the phone down and looked out at the horizon. I was no longer just Richard's widow or Leo's mother. I was Eleanor Vance, the trustee of my own life, the protector of my own future. I had been tested, and I had not been broken. I was living life finally on my own terms. And so, the war was over. I didn't just save my husband's legacy. I found my own strength and gave my son a chance to truly find his. The house is quiet again, but this time it's a peaceful silence, one that I control. But now I have to ask you a question that I still struggle with. My son betrayed me, yet I chose to guide him back with a firm hand instead of cutting him off completely. So, which path was the right one for a mother to take? Let me know your honest opinion in the comments. Type A. If you believe in unconditional forgiveness, I should have forgiven him freely and given him his inheritance. A mother's love shouldn't have strings attached. Type B. If you believe in tough love, I did the right thing. True love is giving someone the hard lesson they need to grow, no matter how much it hurts. I can't wait to read what you would have done in my shoes. Thank you for following my story.